So here we are again. Richard might be joining us later, but we have one last question that we got from comments on the blog, and then we're going to move into another topic. But the first item for today, it's from R.J. Llewellyn. Do we have any advice for authors who, despite their best efforts, are finding their work is not being noticed? Should we be satisfied with completing and publishing our works? And what about the element of luck?
Well, I don't really have any advice. I know I don't do marketing nearly as well as I should for a variety of reasons, laziness being the big one, just not wanting to learn all the different techniques and things. Now, someday I may feel that it's worth doing, but right now I mostly use my blog, and I do that by responding, like following a lot of blogs, commenting, not feverishly, but when I have something to say after someone's post, I say it. I always follow back people who comment or even like one of my posts. I visit their blog back and maybe sometimes comment on that if I have something useful to say. And so I sort of work that, and I have increased my following there. And many of my readers are other writers who have WordPress blogs. But of course, that isn't a huge market, so that only gets me so far. And my other piece of advice, which isn't really that great, I guess, is to readjust expectations and not go into debt with your writing unless you really do know what you're doing. In terms of spending money on advertising or something like that, I wouldn't do it just as a gamble, unless you have money to burn, right? And maybe some people do. But apart from that, it's readjust your expectations, savor the satisfaction of having created a work that's out there, and do what promotion type things you can do genuinely without stressing yourself out. So that's my take.
I think I'm kind of in the same place. With the last novel I published, I paid for a Kirkus review. I also paid for some, website promotion opportunities, and I don't think any of those did anything for me, to be honest. I don't know that the Kirkus review produced anything other than a quote that I could put on the cover of my book. Other than that, one of the things I'm doing now is trying to get more involved with local writing groups. I live in between the city of Sacramento and the city of Elk Grove in California, and a little sliver of county land. And so I generally say, depending on what I want to get across, I'm either from Sacramento or I'm from Elk Grove. But there's an Elk Grove Writers Guild that I just learned about. They put on a books and music festival a couple weeks ago. So I went to that, and I've joined them, and I'm going to try to get more connected to local writers and local writing organizations. There's also a Northern California Publishers and Authors Association that I'm probably going to join to see if that can help in any way. But I'm kind of like you, Audrey. A lot of the marketing efforts, I got into writing to write, not to have to become an expert marketer. And I feel like the market has exploded in the 10 plus years that I've been doing this. So it makes it that much harder to be noticed and to, have your book be noticed. So it just makes those efforts even more challenging. So I'm trying to subscribe to Berthold's theory of writing and publishing, which is enjoy the readers you have. and if it ever gets bigger than that, I'll be happy, but I'm trying to just accept what it is for now. So, Lucinda, do you have anything other than your newsletter? Or
at the moment I'm running Facebook ads. I like to make them richer than me. I'm kind like that, I had a tremendous, well, first of all, yes, I did go to Reedsy, and I did pay a lot of money for a lady to set up Facebook ads and run them for a month. I didn't see any noticeable difference, and it cost me a lot of money. Um, you name it, and since 2013, I have tried just about everything. Okay. The first thing I would say is to this writer is I personally wouldn't follow any of the courses that it seems a bit mean, but looking at them, I signed up for one. It was a large amount of money, and the first piece of information I got was change all your book covers. And I said, "What? You mean all 13 of them?" Because I only had 13 at the time. And yes, and look, I had this book cover and that book cover, and then with this book cover, I had these sales. With this book cover, I had this sales. And I'm thinking, I can't see any of the difference between book cover one and book cover two. They are in the market to make money from writers. And what makes me quite cross about a lot of them, right, is that they're not looking at the quality of your book. They're not looking at whether it's been well edited. Okay, they might look at the book, not personally necessarily, at the back blurb and the cover, but that's about as far as it goes. So they are happy, a lot of them, I think, to take money from people to make them super duper writers and hit the bestseller list, when quite frankly, it wouldn't matter if, I don't know, Charles Dickens, gave them a helping hand. It's not, they're not going to make the top. I think from the questioner's point of view, I would say, are you happy to write and have your books out there and have them selling when you're still pushing up the daisies, even if they don't sell many? Or do you basically really, really want to succeed? Amazon ads, Facebook ads seem to bring in the most revenue, but they do cost, and you've got to have quite a bit of money put by in order to run them. I had, when I did the 1 month with Readsy, I said thanks, but no thanks, not for another month. But then I put them up myself. And it's a very long story about hysterical stuff I had with Facebook personal marketer. Oh boy, was that fun. In the end, I mean, he managed to freeze all my ads and went away, and I didn't hear from him again. So I had to start all over, all by myself. So I had a really big spike, and I thought, great, I got the handle on this, but now they're going downhill again. So it's an ongoing, not battle, but it's an ongoing work you've got to be dedicated to. And I think most of us are a little over middle-aged, maybe just. And we don't have too much time to fiddle and faff around and learn and all the rest of it. So I think we have to accept what we can do. But yes, the newsletter is good, and I've used Voracious Readers for sign-ups and Prolific Works to keep readers on my newsletter because I offer them free books. So that's all I'm doing at the moment, and it's sort of steady-ish.
So you said Facebook ads are the ones that they have produced some sales.
Yes, the reason I'm using Facebook ads is that I think my target audience are slightly older people, and mainly women. So I've targeted those. I've only targeted US, UK, and I can't quite work it out because my US reach is very small, but I'm having as many sales from the US as I am from UK. So I'm a bit puzzled about that. But they're tricky to set up. And if you make a mistake, you just have to really watch them to make sure you're not overspending. Because I think that's where there are a lot of people on Facebook. If you advertise with Amazon, it might come up when people are looking for books. But I don't know about you, but I tend to scoot past them. If I'm looking for a particular book, say one of Audrey's books, and there's got a sponsored at the top, I just scoot past. I don't stop and watch. Yeah. So I'm basing it on that.
Yeah. I tried Amazon ads with the last book, and I don't think it produced a single sale. And it's weird to me that you're not the first person to say that Facebook ads produces some results. And I'm the type of person who doesn't pay attention to ads, whether they're on my computer, on my phone, on TV, on the radio. I just tune them out. So I'm not a good person to talk about whether ads work because I don't pay attention to them. And I thought that the best place to do it though would be where readers are. So the Amazon ads are basically, a picture, the image of your book on your Kindle reader when you, log in or log off or, goes to the whatever. Sometimes you get an ad for a book. And I thought that should be the best way to get a reader's attention. And it didn't do anything. So I don't know. I've thought of trying Facebook ads, but when I looked into it a few months ago, the way I understood it is you have to have a business page in order to link to the ads. You can't just use your personal Facebook page. And I just didn't have any interest in trying to set up a business page at the time, so I haven't done that. But I'm curious. There are people that I follow on Twitter who basically run promotional tweets about their books every single day. And I'm just wondering if that actually does anything for them. Because again, I know as soon as I see that tweet, I'm scrolling further down until I get to see something that I want to see. And so I'm curious. I'd love to know from those people if doing daily tweets about their books actually produces any sales or any value for them. So
I've tried that too, and I've also paid a PA to put them up, and I've done a load of PowerPoint presentations with cute, funny, whatever, as slides for them to use. And I can't say it's the 20-80 rule again. If you want to sell through Twitter, it's 80% chat, chat, chat. Oh, I did the house cleaning today, blah, blah, blah. And then 20%, well, if you happen to be passing a bookshop and you happen to see my dear in the window. So again, it's a time thing. If you want to write, I don't know about you, but I don't have time to write and market and, cook and clean and socialize and all the rest of it. So something's got to give.
Yeah.
And I do have a lot of Twitter notifications, but people do sometimes mention me, but I think they must be desperate because they've run out of people to promote. I don't know. But, they pop up every now and again.
Yeah.
And I talked to some authors yesterday. We had a meetup at the European Women's Union or something, and there were 5 authors there, and I asked them about marketing, and generally they said that they were 2 of them wrote non-fiction books, so they advertised on LinkedIn. That was more of a business thing, and they thought that that probably worked. So, but I wish there was an easy answer. It's not like putting your books on the end of the stall in a Walmart and just seeing what sells and what doesn't. I mean, we're shooting in the dark.
Yep. Has anybody used Ingram Spark?
Yes.
Not yet.
Does that help at all? Because I just do everything through Amazon, and I've thought of with this thing that I just finished writing, I might try Ingram Spark just to see how it works and if it because you can distribute much more widely through Ingram Spark than if you just do Amazon. Is that correct?
Yeah. I understand that they put your book once you've uploaded it, and you have to hang on a second. What do you have to reformat? Because they, different file types. Okay, but that's only for paperbacks because obviously we're best off staying with our free reads for people on Prime. Look, I get an email from them once a month telling me that I've got an extra few cents in the bank and it's working its way up, and when it gets to $10, they'll send it to me. So maybe that answers your question. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, at least they're out there. And the other thing is that if you can get a whole load of friends to go to the local library or the local bookshops and says, oh, I would like, Mark's book, etc. This is the name of it. It comes up on the computer and as a book that they can buy. Now, if it's only on Amazon, they can't do that.
Yeah, if you're going through Ingram Spark, right?
Yeah. Or even,
And you mustn't have any reference to Amazon.
Oh yes, you mustn't have any reference to Amazon. So at the back, if you've got at the
Yeah.
back of your book, you could get
Yeah.
these on Amazon. You've got to take that out, or they'll kick it out.
Yeah.
But basically, your bookseller, your library will check on their whatever they do, and then they can order it. But whereas if it's only on Amazon, they can't order it.
Right.
That makes sense. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you no, I don't. You could also, have it translated into other languages
Oh,
for
yeah.
free. For free. And again, I get little tiny notifications about little tiny amounts I get. But every penny counts, I suppose.
Yeah. Bertold, any thoughts?
First of all, thank you. You summarized my philosophy very well. So I appreciate
I've heard it a few times.
But like Lucinda said, if your goal is to make money, I'm not even sure how much help I can be on that one if that's a person's goal. But I will say this, like thinking about this question, I thought like if I had written the books I've written and absolutely no one had read them, not a single person read them, would it still have been worth it? And I realized that, yeah, actually it would. I mean, obviously, I prefer the fact that people do read them, but there is a certain fun in just the process of creating a world and telling a story and building a character that is fun to do in itself. And I think, I mean, I learned things like writing my science fiction novel. I had to learn stuff about, like our solar system, for example, which may or may not be interesting to people, but chances are if you write a book, it's going to be about something that interests you, and it'll be an opportunity to learn stuff and find things out. There's a great quote, I think it's from the British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli, who said, like, if you really want to learn about something, write a book about it. And there's something to be said for that. And so, while it's probably not ideal, and while we would all prefer to get like Stephen King levels of sales, there's something about just writing a book that is its own reward to an extent.
Yeah.
So if you find any pleasure in that at all, don't give it up. Learn to enjoy that for its own sake, and then if people read it, then that's so much the better.
Yeah.
It's an almost
Go ahead.
it's an almost creepy feeling if you. Well, I tend to check my stats very often, far more often than I should. But if I see that the royalties have gone up, I think, wow, somebody out there has read 3 pages of one of my books, and that's a hell of a kick. It really is.
Well, that's my Kindle dashboard had been extremely quiet for about a month. And when I say extremely quiet, I mean absolutely no sales for about a month. And then all of a sudden, I know Bertold probably saw these tweets, like 3 or 4 days running, people were either buying a download, buying a paperback, or reading hundreds of pages on Unlimited, or whatever it's called. And it's like, okay, where did that come from? Where did this blip come from where suddenly I in a series of in a period of 3 or 4 days, I suddenly sold about 8 or 9 copies worth of different books of mine.
Wow.
I no idea why, who it is. So
There's a school of thought that thinks that cross promotion with other authors is, it does pay dividends, because although they say, oh, you're only interacting with other authors, we read. Well, I
right.
think most authors read. So, for example, Audrey, if you send me a short paragraph and a picture of one of your books, I'll put it in my next newsletter. Okay, so that's something I can do, and then take it in turns, and it, because I think your books probably are closest to my audience. whether, and it'd be interesting when we chat in a couple of months' time to see if you notice any difference in sales. It'd be like a test.
Okay, I will do that.
Hmm.
But
You know,
that's, I mean, but that is something that, I think my audience generally are other writers that I've met through social media and, a certain portion of my, closer in real life friends and family. And then there are a few people that I, have no idea who they are or how they got to my books, other than maybe some of these promotional efforts. But it really is through other writers that I feel like that's really the best way, the only way I am able to expand. And I know Bertold does a lot of reviews of indie books, and I try to, do things like that every once in a while too. If I read an indie book that I like, I'm going to put it on my blog, and I'm going to, do things like that. So it is that's one way, connect with other writers.
For what it's worth, Mark, I mean, the way I discovered your works was through Carrie Rubin. So
Yeah.
And then Audrey, I found your site through Mark's. So it's kind of
Yeah.
neat how these things work.
Yeah.
There's all these connections.
Yep. Yeah. Carrie, Kevin Brennan, the two of you, three of you, Richard now. I mean, there's probably a couple dozen writers who either through blogging or Twitter, I feel like I have pretty strong connections with, and that helps. But it's, still kind of feels like a drop in the bucket.
well, I heard yesterday they're publishing 4,000 new books every day.
Yep.
That's cheerful.
Is that 4,000 coming from publishers or the entire market, including indies?
I don't know. I mean, she
Yeah.
wasn't more specific than that, but I think nearly everybody, according to the stats, 70% of all books sold are now going from Amazon. Now,
Oh, yeah.
but if you look at Nielsen ratings rankings, where they're saying ebooks are falling through the cracks and paperbacks are doing very well, Nielsen, as far as I know, do not include indie books in their rankings. They'll take books from Ingram Spark that, whatever been ordered from their listing, and presumably what libraries have bought, what bookshops have also bought.
Yeah.
So those stats are very slanted.
And
So
also have to remember, our books aren't going out of print unless we decide to take them down for some reason. So, the whole stock of books available to people, usually in ebook form, is enormous now. And it's getting bigger and bigger. So it's no wonder that any individual book, especially one that's been around for a while, isn't going to be noticed. So there's that.
And people are so entitled. That's the right word, entitled, because they expect free books.
Yep. So in looking at the question, do all four of us agree that it's essentially down to luck?
Yeah, in effect.
Huge size. Yeah.
And doing it because you enjoy writing, rather than trying to get rich or get famous or something. But it's a bonus if someone actually buys or reads your book. I admit that for sure.
But again, I mean, just that statistics you just quoted, Lucinda, the 4,000 books a day, that's 1.5 million books a year. It's luck if you get noticed. And I remember when I first started this, people saying that even traditionally published authors, the vast majority of them don't sell 100 copies of their book. Even traditionally published writers. So it's not just a problem for indie writers. It's just there's so many books out there, and also more and more people aren't reading. So it's more books chasing fewer readers. That's what your odds are.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I mean, and anyway, somebody like Random House Penguin doesn't have a lot to spare after the paying, what is it, Harry, $20 million for his book. I mean, that's 20. That's about hundreds of us who could do with 100. you
Yep,
know,
yep.
$100 for their books, and I'm sure they're probably going to be more interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'll only buy what sells, and I really do understand now that I don't care if somebody sort of sneers and says, "Oh, you're independent, are you?" I don't think people actually look to see anymore.
No.
Whether do you agree with that, Audrey?
Yeah, I think people who find your book and read it, they don't say, "Ooh, before I read this, I better make sure it's published by a real publisher." Or I don't see a publisher name here. It says published by Audrey Driscoll. I don't think I'll read this book. I mean, I would think that if it's caught their interest, that isn't going to be an issue. So
I
it's
agree with
just the attention getting mechanism is maybe marginally better if you go through a traditional publisher or someone who's got a marketing department. But I think for relatively unknown authors, that's the effort they put in is going to be pretty minimal anyway. So, you know, you're not that much. Also, that publisher can decide to make your book take it out of print. And whereas if you're independent, you can, it's up to you. So there is that. I think it's getting to be where the relatively unknown author, whether they're traditionally published or indie, it's edging to be better if you're indie. You have more control.
Yeah, you do. And in fact, there's some big names now that are going independent. They might be able to afford marketing companies, but unless had been not just a #1 bestseller, but you know, in the eye and you're really, really famous, the traditional publishers might give you a flurry for maybe 1 or 2 months, but after that you're on your own. And if you don't make the sales, and we know how difficult that is, then even if they signed a 3-book contract, they can, you know, duck out of it. And if you suddenly think, oh, let me have a quick promotion, I'll drop it all to 99 cents or something for Black Friday or whatever, your publishers probably won't play ball with you because it's not worth their while. There's a lot against going with trying to get a traditional publisher. Certainly money-wise, there's no comparison.
A writer I know, I think I've shared the story before. He writes cozy mysteries, and he had a deal with a pretty small publisher, and they published his first book, and then after that, they refused to publish anything else because he didn't have enough of a social media presence.
I've heard this if you're trying to get an agent, the first question they'd ask is, how many followers you got on Facebook? How many on Twitter? How often do you go on LinkedIn? Have you posted on Pinterest 4 times today? That kind of thing, you know. Then they'll say, have you written a book? You know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, after they go through all that. Now let's talk about your book. Okay. Any more thoughts on this?
No,
Okay.
but if wherever this goes out and anybody's watching and they've actually found a way of, please let us know.
Yeah.
Because I would really value their advice.
Yeah. And I unfortunately, very rarely hear from anybody who's an indie writer who's figured out how to crack this code.
I don't think anyone has.
No.
No one has.
Okay. So the next question topic we're going to cover was one that I think was prompted by a tweet that I saw a number of months ago, and it basically is, why do you read? And as I mentioned on the blog a few days ago, to me that's a relevant question for writers, because the reason that people read should be part of what we consider while we're writing. So I don't know if anybody wants to start. I think all 4 of us read quite a bit. So why do you read?
Well, I looked at this question as sort of like, not why do you read fiction or some genre or any particular book, but why do you read at all? Like, just why seek out something in print, or you know, printed on paper or printed on the cereal box? It's to give your brain something to do for some interval of time, either because you have nothing, nothing's going on that's interesting right then, or because you want to get away from whatever is going on, either around you or in your head, and you just want something else for your brain to deal with and engage with instead of whatever happens to be right there, right now. So that's why I read, and I think that's probably why a lot of people read. And that's why, if you're in a situation where you have to sit around and wait and there's nothing to read, you get kind of, well, I get sort of edgy. So you look for whatever happens to be there, even if it's, I don't know, the instruction manual for some sort of device. At least it gives your brain something to do rather than sit there and think, there's nothing happening here. Or, what, it's something, unpleasant or just nothing. It's to fill up I think human brains are just have evolved to always need some kind of input. And in the absence of things that I don't do like TV or video games, I don't do that. Reading is it. So that's why I read. And as to what I choose to read, that's another question altogether.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said, why do I read? Because I've always read. That's what we did when I was growing up. Reading was it. But, a little bit more of a deeper, more thoughtful answer, it's a lot of what you just said, Audrey. I realized when I think about this question that reading is probably one of the very few activities that I engage in where I can shut my brain off. That when I'm reading, I'm not thinking about work, or I'm not thinking about family problems, or, mass shootings or anything like that. When I read, it's the one activity where I can shut all that out. And so I read. And again, like you also, sounds like you always make sure you have something to read with you. I go to doctor's office or dentist's office, and there are people there who just sit there, and now they have their phones to look at. But before smartphones came into being, people would go to, and wait for their appointment, and they would just sit there. And it's like, how do you do that? How do you just sit there? I've always had a book or a magazine or something with me everywhere I go, because that way I have something to read if there's any downtime. And it's the other things that I think about with this is, I tried to get my kids to become readers, and tell them that when you read, you never stop learning, you never stop experiencing other worlds and new things. And it just reading is this thing that just opens up everything. And that's another reason why I read. So,
Well, I don't even go down to the local supermarket without this in my bag. I mean, you never know, I might get a puncture and have to wait for the tow truck. So I know that I can sit there and read, and I can be quite happy. I can wait outside a shop while somebody goes inside for ages because I'm sitting reading. It became a habit for me when I was very little as a form of escapism.
yeah.
And that habit has never gone away. I mean, I go to the smallest room in the house, I've got a book in my hand. I turn the light out at night. Luckily, my Kindle's got a light on it. And I find it very hard to understand why people don't read. And you've both covered every base. I love learning. I love traveling. When I can't afford to go to Alaska, I'll read a book about Alaska. I immerse myself in the story. And if somebody says, hey, are we going out now? I'm miles away. I'm not there. And the other thing is that you're not in control when you're sort of in control when you're reading, because I think one of the main reasons for being a writer is that you're in control. You can kill them off, chop their legs off, send their partners off with the cute blonde from the office, that kind of thing. But and there are certain books, when I don't even do the washing up, I don't make the bed, I'm there and I'll say, go away. I'm not moving until I finish this book. And it's just, but as you say, there's so many people who are not reading now and can't understand it because it's the greatest pastime in the world, for me anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have 2 minutes left. Do you have any thoughts on this, Virgil?
Really, the three of you have pretty much covered everything, and that's basically my rationale too. It's like it's just a way to go into another world, and that it can be a very different sort of world depending what you're reading and what you're in the mood for. But it's just a way of going somewhere else. And it's kind of unlike with like a movie or something, you have to do some work because you're imagining what that world is. You take the writer's words and then you put it together into some image of your own. So,
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
there's definitely, go ahead.
I think we could probably revisit this topic in our next talk.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to, because I don't think we've worked it as thoroughly as we could. Plus, there
Well,
are comments on the post that
yeah.
you put out that we could sort of expand on or acknowledge or whatever. So I suggest we save this one for a future talk.
I definitely agree.
why do we read part 2? Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
why did we read part 2? And what the connection of that is to writing, because that's
Yeah,
the thing. I want to figure out a way to connect these thoughts to, okay, then why do we write? What's the connection? So, okay, we're probably just about out of time.
okay.
So thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.